Cinderella couldn't have made that much of an impression on Prince Charming if he needed a glass slipper to even figure out who she was. I mean, if you really liked the girl, I think you would at least remember her face. Nonetheless, your dreams can come true too, with a little bit of magic and a whole lot of believing. Before we get started, check the description below for all the supplies you'll need. So, what do you need for the royal ball? Well, we'll go through the basics of making any resin piece so you can make your very own small version of the glass slipper. So, let's get cracking. When you're working with resin, always use a gas mask and plastic gloves. If you get resin on your hands, it's a little hard to get off and it gets pretty sticky. Also, make sure your room's temperature is between 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit for better curing and to prevent air bubbles in your resin. Now what we're going to do is put our resin and epoxy mix into this glass slipper mold. To do this, we need to first measure out equal amounts of crystal clear resin and epoxy hardener. Some people pour both equally into one silicone cup, while others measure them in separate cups and then combine them into another later. You're definitely going to be more accurate doing it the first way. I'd recommend you do that. So for these next steps, pour everything into one cup. For mine, I thought I'd try the 2-cup method to see how it'd go. Using a scale, pour 100 milliliters of crystal clear resin into a silicone mixing cup. Then, pour 100 milliliters of epoxy hardener into that same cup or another silicone mixing cup. If you poured them into separate cups, combine them into one silicone cup. Using a popsicle stick, mix the combination slowly and thoroughly for about 3 minutes. That means scraping the bottom and sides too. Also, if you mix too fast, you'll see a bunch of bubbles and it won't be easy to get rid of them. My grandma is a pro mixer, so she handled that part. While she was doing that, I set up the mold. We wanted to have a glittery and glass-like slipper, so we put in blue-purple color changing powder and some blue flakes. Once the resin and epoxy mix is ready, pour it slowly into your glass slipper mold. The way we like doing it is pouring a bit at a time and then adding some glitter and flakes. Though at one point I was kinda heavy-handed with the glitter, which my grandma wasn't a big fan of.
No more!
Yes! There's none on the top now. You have to go on the top.
Not too much. Not too much.
It's gonna be fine.
It always looks more simple and better than gaudy.
With the popsicle stick, move the glitter and flakes to where you want them. You may have to push it down to get it more into the top of the heel. When the mold is completely filled, let it cure for 24 hours. We gave it an extra hour and then slowly took it out of the mold. If there's some resin in between the heel, you can use a scissor to cut it a little bit, and then a Dremel to sand it down completely. We actually liked how we could feel the flakes at the bottom, so we didn't want to sand that, but for the edges, we used wet-dry sandpaper to smooth it out. When it comes to sanding, you need a lot of different grit sandpaper to eventually get a smooth and equal sanded resin piece. For each round, wet the sandpaper and sand for about 3 minutes. First, use a coarse grit sandpaper like 150. Then, continue on to 220, 320, 400, 600, 1000, and 1200. Now, I didn't have 3000 grit sandpaper, but if you do, definitely sand it down with that last. To polish the resin, we used Brasso, which is good for polishing metal and jewelry. However, we still had little holes in our resin, so some of the white from the polisher got into them. For this, I'd recommend getting something like Envirotex Light before adding the Brasso. Put a little bit of Brasso onto a cloth and scrub it in. After that, you should have one sparkling glass slipper for your magical night at the royal ball. Don't you just love how resin comes out? I mean, look at all these colors, they're so unique. Which I'm curious how your glass slippers came out, so please put that in the comments below, I'd love to hear. But if this video helped, please give us a like, and if you're looking to learn how to do other arts and crafts, or maybe learn something new, Be sure to subscribe and check out the rest of our how-to hub. Your next project might be right here. Well, I gotta figure out some dance moves for the ball tonight, so I'll catch you guys later.